Okay. Hello, Dave.
Gentlemen,
Dave?
great to be with you.
You too?
Mm-hmm.
I have to imagine that it's a bit surreal for you guys sitting here and reflecting back on the beginning of your journey and where it all began, and think about how far you've come. And not to put more pressure on you, but when you think about the impact that Taylor Guitars has had, not just on the music world, but on thousands of employees and suppliers and dealers and all their collective families in the community. Mm-hmm. What's that feel like thinking back?
Gosh, Dave, you're going to make me cry.
Oh, man. Well, for
I'm
me,
one of those families, so it's a big deal.
Well, if I think back to when I first started making guitars, it was almost embarrassing to say, because people would be like, "Oh, do you do that in your garage? What do you do for a living?" And so in those early days, I thought, gosh, it'd be great to make this a legitimate career for me and for people who work for us, So I'd always determined that this is what I want to do, but it was spooky to go into it when I was just a teenager, wondering how I'd ever make a living at it. So that's a great feeling of satisfaction to see that it did turn into something. I mean, that's besides the guitars,
right.
Yeah. Time's a lot different when you're that young. Looking at 10 years is like a long ways. I remember our first couple of years in business when Mose came and was working for us. Mm-hmm. And who is his partner? I can't remember his name, but he was like 30. And I'm like, gosh, I can't believe that guy is 30. That is really old. And, and thinking at the time about being in business for 10 years, I was like, man, that is way out there. And the idea then of a company doing even $1 million a year, that was a distant horizon to look way out there and think that someday you could actually do $1 million a year. So yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of steps and a lot of years, and keep taking the next step is what it's been.
Yeah, we used to say to each other, wonder what it'll feel like when we've been in business for 10 years.
Yep. Yeah.
You guys have done lots of interviews over the years in various media for various audiences. What do you hope listeners take away from these conversations?
Encouragement for the things that they love to do.
Just learn more about the background of the company, where the guitars came from, because the guitars came from us, came from Bob, his desire to make guitars, and then the company we built from it and everyone helping us do it.
Yeah, you see a band, they get popular, and you're coming into their story when they get popular. And then you see like the behind the music or the whatever, and you look at the biography of Dolly Parton or something, you're like, wow, I'm more impressed. You know what I mean? And not to be more impressed, but it's because a lot of people in the world just think Taylor is a corporation that is and always has been, but it hasn't always been there. It got started by a couple of kids.
Yeah, if you're young enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that this could serve for posterity, for future generations to listen in to you guys telling these stories for years to come?
Oral history is worthwhile, I think. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah, maybe.
If someone's interested.
If they're interested, maybe they don't care. Hopefully they do.
Thought we'd talk about some of the prehistory to the American Dream and Taylor Guitars.
Mm-hmm.
Let's set the Wayback Machine, go back to the beginning. You guys talk about when you were born, where you were born, what did your parents do? Give us some color on your upbringing.
You bet.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was born in 1955, March 12th. My dad was in the Navy. He was stationed in Oakland at the time. My folks are from Montana, Missoula, Montana, then Bozeman, Montana. My kin came from Missouri to Montana, starting with, I would say, my grandfather. They had a homestead up there. His parents did. And my grandpa Taylor and his brother Neil, when they were 8 and 12 years old, used to go on their own from Missouri to Montana every summer to work on the homestead so they wouldn't lose it. They'd find their way there, and they'd find their way back. And they'd do that kind of stuff. So, I mean, even as not so far back as my own grandpa, they were real pioneers. And so a lot of family there, a lot of the Taylor clan became Canadians. You know, which side of the border do you want to build a ranch on? Take your pick.
Really?
Right? Yeah. And then the Funk clan, which was my Grandpa Taylor's wife. And so my dad was living at a time in Montana where jobs were a little scarce. In Missoula or Bozeman. He joined the Navy. That was a long ways from Montana. He joined for 2 years and decided, I don't like water and I don't like ships. So he came back and he's like, I need a job. So he joined again, was a career Navy man. He spent 20 some years and retired when he was in his early 40s, which blows my mind.
That is amazing to think about.
Yeah. And then he went up and did house remodels and things like that. But so I was born there. We moved to San Diego, got stationed there, lived here until I was in second grade. Got stationed in Virginia. We moved there for 2 years, came back to San Diego, and I grew up in San Diego, except for being born in Oakland, a few months in Bozeman between being in the Navy and not being in the Navy and being in the Navy again, and Virginia a couple of years, and then here. So I'd say I'm a San Diego boy. And my folks made things, and so did I. Catch me up to that part of your life.
Okay. Well, I'm a native San Diegan. I'm one of the few born here. My folks were from Chicago. They met in their church, Lutheran church in Chicago after World War II. My dad was a pilot in Europe during World War II. And they met singing in the choir. So music's always been in the family. Mm-hmm. And they got married in 47 and came out to San Diego. My dad had been to San Diego before the war with some buddies. They came out, and I can't imagine what San Diego was like then, before World War II. But he came out with some buddies, and they got jobs here, and they liked it. And when the U.S. got into the war, they enlisted. So they decided, my mom and dad decided they'd come back to San Diego, and they settled in North Park at first, not far from here. And I was born at Hillside Hospital, which is on Adams Avenue, pretty close to here. And I think it's like a convalescent hospital or something. Hospitals then used to be these little single level things. Remember that? They weren't big, multi-story. And then when I was one or two, we moved to Bonita, and my grandparents had built a retirement home. My folks lived in it. Then my folks bought some land and built their own house. Grew up in Bonita. We had a piano. We all played the piano. I kind of took to it. I started lessons in kindergarten. Kept taking piano lessons all the way through into junior high. When the Beatles happened, when I was in sixth grade, the Beatles happened. And that was like, okay, this is our music. Like my sister, who's 3 years older, their music was, Skeeter Davis, the Four Seasons, and we couldn't relate to that at all. That wasn't our music. But then when the Beatles happened, I was like, oh, cool, this is our music. So I wanted to play guitar. My folks got me a guitar. It was a classical guitar with steel strings, and it was really, really difficult to play. Just an inexpensive guitar. And, then played guitar and had friends who played guitar through junior high and high school. And then went into college. And Bob should catch up to there now.
Yeah. Well, so we moved from Virginia. I was in the fourth grade. By then I was making things that I needed to play with. If I needed something, I'd get a 2x4. Or if there was a bike, I would fix it, or that type of thing. And I do remember pulling into San Diego as the family. We had a 1957 Ford. My dad took the back seat out of it, put a piece of plywood on back there, and 4 kids sat on that plywood. We bounced all the way across the nation on that plywood board, and the seat showed up in the moving van, and put it back in the car. But we rolled down to some friends' place that were living on Grand Avenue in Pacific Beach on a little house. And I remember pulling up, and you could see the beach from there, and you could smell it.
Oh, cool.
And it was like, wow, palm trees and that kind of thing. And, got into school, started doing things. I started getting a little bit interested in guitar playing when the kid across the street named Mike Broward, who I would watch him stand in his garage with an electric guitar. Maybe it was probably a Fender. I don't know. I hadn't heard of Fender. He had an amplifier. Who knows what it was? He had a microphone hooked up to his amplifier, and he'd just play by himself. Mrs. Brown, you got the lovely daughter. I'm like, wow, that's cool. And he had a little guitar, painted on binding, and I bought it for $3. And then I started sanding off binding and repainting it. And one day I sawed the neck off of it. So I guess I'm in 5th grade or something like that. I wanted to play guitar, but I couldn't stop looking at the guitar. I couldn't stop looking at it. How do they make it? What is this white stuff around the edge? And how do they do this thing around the sound hole? And I do remember sanding off all the white paint and then taking my tester's model paint and trying to repaint it. I could never get a straight line. And one day I sawed the body off. I wanted an electric guitar. I took the neck and I thought, well, I'm going to make an electric guitar. I would go to the music store, Apex Music, San Diego, right? George Olsher. And there was the big one downtown and a couple little ones in strip malls.
Broadway and 7th Avenue downtown.
Yeah.
I know it.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a big store. And so they had one up at the Claremont Quad, up just right up the hill from Mission Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Ride my bicycle over there, and they had these pick guards, you could buy a pick guard, and they put in pearl and had like a pickup in it with gold foil on it and 2 knobs. Oh man, I wanted one of those so bad because I could make an electric guitar. I'd drive over, look at it, drive home, drive over, look at it, ride over, go back and forth, back and forth. I took my neck, went to the boys club, got a piece of plywood, sawed out a shape, sanded it for hours on end until the edges were smooth. That's as far as I got. I just didn't know how to make the neck go on the body, or no thought of how I'd hold the strings on, how I'd put that pick guard in, and they never had the money. And then my folks bought me a guitar from FedMart. Remember FedMart?
Yeah, FedMart, yep.
Saul Price, who started the Price Club, who merged with Costco.
FedMart and Unimart.
Yeah. and it was a little electric guitar. I think they spent less than $20 on it. Black diamond strings that you could buy.
Yeah.
It had no amplifier.
We used to go to Sears to get strings.
Sears in North Park. The folks would come up right off of University Avenue, park in the parking lot, leave us kids all in the car, and they'd go and shop for 2 hours, and we'd, fight and bounce and wait in the car. It was great. Kids were pretty durable back then, it seemed. And so I just always had this interest in guitar. By the time 6th grade rolled around, I finally got that guitar. It had a chrome pickguard on it and 1 pickup. And when I describe these things, I describe them vaguely because I didn't know anything about them. As I look back, it was probably some kind of super cheap Strat copy, that kind of a shape. I have no idea what the name
Would have been
was.
Japanese then, right?
Would have been Japanese.
Because the cheap things came from Japan then.
Yeah. And then I started listening to more folk music. A lot of people my age were listening to rock and roll, English rock and roll, Cream, Iron Butterfly, or that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I would listen on KGB, which is still a...
KGB, yeah.
Yeah. That was an AM radio, 136 KGB, and I'd listen to the top hit songs. And so mixed in there was Gordon Lightfoot and John Denver and Peter, Paul, and Mary, all shuffled in with the with the rock and roll. I loved that. I wanted an acoustic guitar. Got a Coronet acoustic guitar. Coronet, the Japanese company that makes the woodwinds. $36, bought it at Apex. My sister Georgie was a hostess. She was just a little older than me. I was, I guess, in 9th grade, 8th grade by then, maybe something like that. She loaned me money from her tips. I bought that guitar for $36. Looking back on that, it was a copy of a Gibson Dove. I didn't know what a Gibson was, didn't know what a Fender was, didn't know what a Martin was.
Yeah.
And then I went down to Apex downtown when I got my motorcycle, 1969 Honda 350, CB 350, which I think was a motorcycle that changed the motorcycle world. You meet the nicest people on a Honda. And that motorcycle went from ugly motorcycles. You had Harleys and you had ugly motorcycles. And then Honda was a beautiful one. And I have a 1969 Honda CB 350 right now. That thing is 52, 3 years old, and its styling is still legit, right? It's a beautiful motorcycle. And I rode down there, went into Apex Music. By then I was in 11th grade. Yeah, 11th grade high school. And I'd already won the California Industrial Arts Blue Ribbon first place in 8th grade and 9th grade for metalworking projects I did.
Yeah, for your Vice.
Yeah, and my desk lamp. And
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally won those. I was good at making stuff. And I went down there and I saw Echo Ranger. I didn't know it was Echo, and I didn't know it was an Echo Ranger. It was just a guitar. It had a skinny neck and 12 strings because I wanted to play some John Denver and Gordon Lightfoot kind of songs. It was $179, and poof, I don't have $179. My folks weren't going to give me $179. So I thought, I'm going to make a guitar. That's what I'm going to do. And I've been making things all along. And I'd taken about 3-4 years of metal shop in a row through junior high and high school. I was in auto shop. It was the beginning of the year. Went to the teacher and said, I want to quit auto shop. I want to go to wood shop. I want to build a guitar. And so I joined. And I proved to the teacher within a couple of days that I didn't need to sit in the classroom because I was already... Well, when I did those metal shop projects that I entered in the fair, my teacher compelled me to make like storyboards. So I'd do a 4x8 piece of plywood, and then I would I made this vise, jeweler's vise that I had to forge and cast and lathe and thread and polish and file and fit and do all this stuff. But I had to make about 4 of them because I had to put on the board, here's what the raw material looks like. Here's what the raw material looks like when it was forged. Here's what the piece looked like before I turned this ball. And I had to put drafting plans on it, top view, side view, isometric views, bill of materials, had to do the whole thing. It's part of probably how I learned that talking about how we build guitars to customers is as important as showing them just the guitar. Yeah. A teacher taught me that in 8th grade. You put that project out there, you can have a vice, or you can show the story behind how that vice came to be. You'll probably win. And I did, because the vice was impressive and the story was impressive.
Yeah.
Right? And it was time in that class to learn how to draw plans. We're going to spend the next 2 weeks learning how to draw plans. So I went home last night, drew plans for a guitar, brought them out, and unrolled them. Do you think I need to stay inside and learn how to draw plans? And he's like, no, Robert, it looks like you don't need to. So I would go out and start working on my guitar. And then it become tool identification test. You got to come in and identify, mimeographed pictures of tools. And it's like, you show me those once, I'll never forget, you know.
Did you guys, you and the other students, cast little tiki heads in metal shop?
Yeah, we had to, we did all of that. And
make a spice rack in wood shop.
Yeah. I made a jewelry box in 7th grade wood shop. And then the next wood shop class I took was signing up specifically to make a guitar. And I made 3 guitars and a banjo in my 11th and 12th grade high school career.
And when did you decide that that's what you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
By the time I got to like page 12 of Irving Sloane's Classic Guitar Construction, before I made my first guitar, which was a 12-string guitar with a book about how to make a classical guitar, and the two guitars that I had in my hands to copy were my friend's Yamaha FG something, a $75 guitar, and my $37 Coronet. Those are the only two examples of real guitars I had.
Yeah, that's amazing, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, stories I've heard from Bob over the years in terms of troubleshooting, because he's good at figuring out how things are made, how they work, why they're not working, how to troubleshoot them. He told me one story about with his motorcycle, his Honda. He rode it home one day, and then he went out to get on it again, and it wouldn't start. So he took it all apart, figuring out why it wouldn't start. And actually, it had run out of gas at the moment he got home. And he finally came around to that it was as simple as he ran out of gas at that moment.
Which is why to this day I go, did you put glue in it? And they're like, well, did you put glue in it? Well, that can't be check your glue. You know what I mean?
The most basic thing.
You can run out of gas the minute you turn off your engine to where you don't think it could possibly be that, because it was running the last second, and you can waste a lot of time. Yeah. You got to find out what's really wrong and check this. And so you can forgive every service tech that you call that says, have you rebooted your computer? Is it plugged in? Is your keyboard plugged in? And you're like, yeah, my keyboard's plugged in, but they got to ask you those questions.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's like, okay, sorry.
Got
That's
it.
Right.
Kurt, take us through high school. You mentioned the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, 6th grade for you.
Yeah, well, I started playing guitar and stopped taking piano lessons finally. In junior high wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. And I liked working on things like Bob, with my hands. I didn't have the talent that Bob did to do that. I remember building like speaker cabinets and ordering the speakers from, was there a catalog called Allied Electronics?
There was Allied and Heathkit. Those are the two I knew.
Yeah, from Allied, I think. Looking back on it, I had to go to my dad for all the money too, to buy the speakers and everything. And then I'd sell it to somebody and I'd keep all the money. I hadn't quite figured out that I should pay him back for the, for buying this stuff for me. But I liked working on things. I didn't do metal shop. I did woodworking, in junior high. But I was better at math and things like that. In high school, I was really into different bands, including like The Doors. I graduated in 1970, and I was pretty bored. I remember in class I'd draw like amplifiers and guitars and things, and I always loved the jazz bass, the shape of the jazz bass, and remember The Doors with their acoustic amps, remember the bass amp, and then the other amps with the light blue horns. And it's so funny, I had the, Bob can relate to this, but I had the Doors albums, and it'd say on the back, produced by Paul A. Rothschild. And I just had this feeling kind of like, I'm going to cross paths with him somehow. I don't know how that will happen, but I'm going to know that guy. And this is like in 10th grade or something.
Wow, yeah.
And then later, Bob and I did business with him.
Crazy.
A few years after we started business. Yeah, it's like, how do things like that happen? So anyway, I played guitar. I never learned how to play very well. I was better on the piano. Went to college, and I remember the first year I went to JC First, Southwestern, and I was doing the normal GE courses and enjoying them. But I remember thinking towards the end of the first year, I just don't want to be on a path that would have to do with science or some regular job, some regular career. I love music. I want to find something I can do that has to do with the arts or music, because that's what makes me happy. Not knowing what that would be. And then a friend of mine from high school, Bob Huff, who I'd stayed in touch with. I was then going to San Diego State. He had managed to get a a bench, not really a job, but a bench at this little place in Lemon Grove called the American Dream, a little guitar shop.
A little hippie shop.
Yeah, it's like people would make a guitar and they'd give so much of the percent to Sam, the owner, and then, buy the materials and they'd keep the profit from making it. Mm-hmm. And so then after a year or two of pestering Bob Huff to see if I could get a job there, I was able to get a job there. And that was I was a junior in college, and that's when I met Bob.
Yeah, I was trying to learn how to build these guitars in high school. Same time, Kurt's 3 years older than I am, or so. And I was making these guitars, trying to figure it out. I could make tools because of all of that metal shop stuff that I did before. And learning how to bend the sides and work the wood and do that kind of thing. And I remember going to a friend's house. This is just one of those glimpses that happen to you every once in a while. I went over to a buddy's house in high school, and in their garage was a little workshop room off in the corner. And inside that workshop was a bench, and his dad was making classical guitars as a hobby. So there were like these guitar parts in there. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I didn't think too much about it. I'm like, oh, somebody's making a guitar. I never went back and looked again. I never talked to his dad. It was just this impression because it was before I'd made my first guitar. But I always think back at that and I always wonder, what if I had, been less shy? What if I had stopped and inquired on that a little bit? And I'll tell you, career-wise, and I was just scared to death of growing up and having to find a job that I didn't hate.
Yeah, getting out of high school, that was pretty daunting. It's like, oh, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to have any fun at all.
Yeah, and I don't really like doing things that have a lot of compulsory structure to them. I don't like that. I remember learning to fly in my early years, and I got far enough along on that, and there was two thoughts I had. I'll probably do this seldom enough to be just good enough to kill myself. So that was one thought. But the other was, I have to fill out a flight plan? I don't want to fill out a flight plan. Kurt understands that about me, man.
Yeah, Bob's idea is to have one key that works for everything in his life. He doesn't want to have multiple keys, and he doesn't want to sign a name on a check either. No. Just a stamp.
I like to be able to freely move into an idea and freely look at it, and I don't want to fill out a reason why I'm doing it. I don't like that. And
I've supported him on that, and I'm a little bit the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like putting numbers and form to it, and okay, how is this going to grow? How are we going to, turn it into profit, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I've always supported him on that in terms of he sees a direction he wants to go in. I'd find the money to get the equipment or whatever he wanted to do.
I do it. And the curious thing is, kind of a neat thing, is that Andy Powers, who's really the most important person at Taylor Guitars right now, has got Kurt's qualities and mine both. He's got great ideas and he likes to put structure to it. His explanations are clear to people. Mm-hmm. He takes the time, So I think that's sort of a beautiful thing. But I spent those years literally in almost crisis mode, wondering, how am I going to be able to make guitars? It's the thing that I want to do. How's that going to happen? And I graduated from high school and I went down.
Let me just say that's part of your makeup, because you're the exact same way about, I'm going to get old and die, and what's going to happen to the company. I mean, his whole motivation behind, from my perspective, behind doing the ESOP and getting that solved was, finally it's a relief to him. I mean, he wasn't thinking in terms of, let's sell this and what'll the price be? And it'll be great to get, this return on my investment after all these years. He's like, thank God I'm not going to die and leave this problem to somebody else.
That's true. That's how I think about it.
Guys, let's take it back to when you met at the American Dream, this serendipitous time that your paths crossed, and it was there for the first time that happened, right?
Well, I was there maybe a week before him or something.
Oh, that close. Okay.
Yeah, it was in August of 73. And he's a guy that would stop by to buy some guitar parts, and he'd bring a guitar and show Sam, and Sam was always really impressed with his work. And then
Sam was a good craftsman.
yeah.
What was the vibe there?
Do-it-yourselfer too.
What was it like? in the
Very
shop?
loose, kind of people could come. Well, like when I started, Tim Larank.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Larank was gone in Hawaii for a couple of months surfing. So you could do things like that because you were basically self-employed if you're there. So it was a group and Greg Deering was there. And, it's basically a group of people that liked guitar, liked music. There were people that come out and just hang out. It was a hangout. Steve Hilliard would come by on the way home from work just to hang out, see what was going on.
Yeah, after I'd been there for a few months, this other young guy named James Goodall came by, and he's like, I want to learn how to build a guitar. Would anybody here like to teach me? And Sam's like, I don't really have the time. And he's like, I'm an artist. I do paintings. Can I trade something for it? And he had a landscape, and Sam's like, oh, yeah, who'd like to do it? And I go, well, I'll show you what you're doing. I have time. And Sam goes, well, if you want to teach this guy how to get going on a guitar, go ahead. So we had this James Goodall painting on our wall by the finish room for all the time until it became Taylor. I don't know what happened to it after that. And then James started making some guitars, and he's had a whole career making guitars ever since that day.
Yeah.
Larry Breedlove, it was a little center of people that knew how to do stuff at the American Dream. And Sam was the center of it all.
Was he influential to you guys?
Very influential.
Well,
to me.
particularly, yeah, especially Bob, because I struggled. I wasn't that good. I was doing refinishing. I wasn't very good at it. I've always been sort of more business-minded, but Bob was like the best guy in the shop. That was clear, pretty quickly. Greg Deering taught me how to do refinish work.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg was a great craftsman, and Greg had gotten a degree in industrial arts at San Diego State, a degree you can't really get anymore. Those were fun days. They were really good. It was kind of work and kind of goof off and super free form. And it wasn't, Kurt didn't learn one thing about business from Sam. I'll tell you that, maybe a little bit, but Sam was pretty loose. Sam's, when we needed money, Sam would wear his Red Sox. That was his sales program, because the
And
Red Sox would bring in some money.
And one side of his wallet was for the shop. The other side was for him.
So it was like that. We had a sofa, and we had, Laura Scudder's natural peanut butter, and we had a flat of dates, and we'd sit down and eat avocado sandwiches with, alfalfa sprouts in them.
And the Taylor logo, we had a little green Taylor brand thermometer in the bathroom, and that's where we got our logo from. That we basically copied that type style of the Taylor thermometer.
I took those letters, chopped them apart, put them in an arc, drew them back together, and it's like, okay, let me get a jeweler saw, and saw that out.
Yeah.
And it evolved and refined a little bit after that.
It was a multi-tenant building in Lemon Grove, and Matt Gazzetta was towards the back. That's how we met Matt, who then came to work for Bob later.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, that's some foreshadowing for the future. Coming up with the Taylor logo, right? How'd you guys get to work every day?
Well, I was living with my folks. I couldn't afford to live on my own. And I had a Ford Falcon that my dad gave me, which wasn't always running. So sometimes I'd hitchhike sometimes. Remember hitchhiking? People don't do that these days. And I think Bob started off with his motorcycle. And then did you get the orange van after the motorcycle?
Yeah, I got the orange van. I got the orange van after the motorcycle, orange Dodge van with a slant 6 in it.
Uh-huh.
And then I was in this group at our church, and we had a bunch of musical gear, and we stored it in my van, so I would haul that to work because we were playing a lot. We were playing a few times a week towards the end of our existence together. We'd play at churches and well, youth rallies or whatever. And
Wings of Faith was his band. Yeah. We'd have a few potlucks, kind of parties when it was still the American dream. And friends would come and
play music.
Some people would get drunk. And there was Stan from Russell's Plumbing. He'd come over. And on Friday afternoons, we'd always walk over and get Mexican food on Broadway. And, we were, it was such a teeny little shop, didn't have any money. I remember walking past the post office up to Broadway and Lemon Grove and seeing one business there. Well, there was Winchell's Donuts, and there was the Purple Turtle Boutique and Bridal Shop. I'm like, God, they're like an established business. They're not ready to go out of business any day like our little shop was.
Well, those shop parties that we used to have before the American Dream, it was Sam's place at that time.
Yeah.
There was great musicians. They were young. Steve Hilliard would play bass. Alan Lindvit would come and sing his songs.
Right. Gary Francisco
would play fiddle. He's ended up with a full career to this day, being Farley the Fiddler at Adventureland at Disneyland. He walks around playing. He's an incredible player.
Yeah.
Mike Thompson, who went on to be a great, well-known musician.
Oh, yeah, he was super talented. I mean, he's played with the Eagles and different bands.
He's an LA musician. Ed
super talented.
Cook. Jack Sherman.
Yeah,
who was the Burks? What were their names? The Burke, was it? He played vibes and drums. And do you remember them?
Vaguely.
I can't say his first name right now. There was Susan Rosenberg, who would sing like Linda Ronstadt and Patsy Cline kind of stuff, and Curly Benson, and all of these people. They were great musicians, and we would just have like an open mic night, and people would jam and play, and I would play. And always, Steve Hilliard passed away a couple of years ago, and I got to talk to him not long before that, but I thanked him over and over my whole life for just being a generous musician, because he sang like a bird. He was as handsome as could be.
Yeah.
From the time he was young to the time he was old, he was a dreamboat, and he played bass and he could really play guitar.
Yeah.
And I'd just be like, man, thanks for letting me play with you. 'Cause it's just nice to play with someone that's way better than you, that is generous and accepts you to do it and truly enjoys it.
Yeah, he was a good friend to us.
Yeah.
Those sound like they were great times. You miss some
really
of that?
good times.
They were. Well, you're young and doing something you like. During that period in the 70s, it was FM radio, KGB, and KGB had the Homegrown album where people would write and record songs about San Diego. So a bunch of the people at the shop, when it was still American Dream, decided to do that. And one of the songs was Alan Lindvit. Was it the Lemon Grove song or the?
Yes, and anybody listening can go to YouTube and search Homegrown album, Lemon Grove song, and hear it.
Lemon Grove song. And Bob Huff paid to record in a studio. Were you on that song?
No, I wasn't on that one.
You were on another one though, weren't you?
I recorded one with Bob Troop and Lee. I'm going to think of his last name in a minute.
Yeah.
He was a great singer, and I recorded some banjo on that one. But
Okay.
name who's on the Lemon Grove song, because I had talked about it. You got Bob Huff,
Steve Hilliard.
Mike Thompson,
Oh yeah, Mike Thompson. Okay.
Ed Cook. And it's, I want to say Alan Burke, but it's not Alan Burke. He played drums. He was a Lemon Grove guy. Really,
Okay.
he went to Berkeley School of Music, went away. He was a great player.
Was he the drummer in Emergency Exit?
No, he wasn't. He was
Okay.
more of a jazz drummer.
Oh, I know who you mean.
Uh-huh.
Did he have like a ponytail?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. That song is great.
It's a good song.
It's a really, really good song. Kurt recorded Kurt.
So I decided to write a song too.
Yeah.
So I wrote a song. I was still at home living with my folks. Wrote it on the piano, and I grew up in Bonita, and near Bonita is what's called Proctor Valley, and there was some stupid legend about the monster of Proctor Valley. So I wrote a song about the Proctor Valley monster, and then I got the guys in Emergency Exit. They were a popular band that played in the clubs. So it was Ed Cook played guitar, Steve Hilliard played bass, Mike Thompson played synthesizer, and I forget who played the drums. And then we recorded it at my folks' out on their patio. No, we learned the song and rehearsed it on my folks' patio. Then Ed Cook had a little recording studio in his garage. We recorded it there one Sunday, and I sent it in. I didn't get on the album. It wasn't a professional recording, but I did hear myself on the radio, like at the Jack in the Box in Lemon Grove, like waiting to pull through and pick up my order, which was amazing.
I have that song on my iPhone, believe it or not, but people would get a real kick out of hearing it. Those great players. And it was like rock and roll. I don't know if is there a Wi-Fi to tap on?
It's embarrassing to even think about the one
Of course
song
it's
I've written.
embarrassing. Now let's see.
My excuse is I was only 21 or 20.
You know, when was the last time you listened back at?
It's been a few years. It's humiliating.
You guys ready for this?
Oh, I'm not.
It's
Mike Thompson. Oh, gee.
Kurt could have been Meatloaf because he did dramatic rock and roll.
Through the place called Proctor Valley, we stopped to do stories made. Though we're feeling warm and cozy,
It does sound kind of 70s, doesn't
it's all
it?
rosy.
Anyways, what we have to do is I'll transfer this because you guys might want to actually record it and play us out with that. And there's some great there's some great guitar solo work in that.
It's always been a good musician.
Yeah.
He lives in Cody, Wyoming now, and he's in a band that plays at
You
a
guys never
steakhouse
thought
there.
Kurt did that.
What?
You guys never thought Kurt did
Had
that.
no idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he lives in Cody,
Well,
Wyoming now.
Yeah.
Doesn't he either own or as director? He's in charge of music at a bars.
Yeah, they're the regulars at this place.
Yeah, regulars.
Might
He's
be
a great
called,
player.
Might be called the Stagecoach. I don't remember.
I don't know. I remember one time we were sitting there eating dates, and I'm trying my hardest to learn the chords of a Stevie Wonder song, which were not 1, 4, 5 chords. And I'm like, Mike, have you heard this song? He's like, no. And not Mike, Ed, have you heard this song? He's like, no. I go, well, let me play it for you. I have a cassette recorder. I'm trying to figure out the chords. And so he just turns on, he listens. He's like, okay, that's D minor 9th, D minor 7th, D minor 10th. It's suspended. He's just listening to it. I'm just writing down the chords, you know. I'm like, wow, somebody can do that?
It's helpful without YouTube to have something like that.
It's crazy because he could hear it for the first time and he had perfect pitch and he knew what chords they were playing, you know. So, and we're all young. We're just kids.
Yeah.
Emergency Exit. So anyways, Homegrown was great. You got a chance to be on the radio. I got on the radio. I never got on the album.
Yeah, same as me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a thing for a long time. You know, the Homegrown album.
Love it. No, you got your creative expression there. You mentioned that.
There you go.
You had that in you. Yeah. Yeah.
We were trying to play music. We were better at other things,
Yeah.
but it was fun.
All right, let's go back to the dream. Let's go back to when Sam tells you that the dream is either going to be shut down or sold. And you guys go your separate ways and come up with your own plans to.
Well, we went our separate ways, but we weren't really. Kurt and I weren't an item, anyways. You know, I was over here in my perfectly white T-shirt, and you know my whatever, you know, and I'm working on guitars diligently, and Kurt was over here with Bob Huff, and they're refinishing guitars, making electric guitars.
Bob was a clean church-going guy. We weren't. I'll put it that way. I mean, I had hair to the middle of my back. I cut earlier that year. You know, before
Kurt has gray hair. He's always had gray hair. I mean, I got pictures. We got pictures of Kurt. It's a big old thick mane, you know, that goes way down.
And there is a picture in that one book of me standing on top of my Ford Falcon in front of the shop. Have you seen that picture?
I think I have over the years. Yeah.
So Sam had a longtime girlfriend who wasn't really around, but she was, I guess his girlfriend, her name was Barbie.
Barbie Cousins.
And he spent money on her. And then he met some gal, was her name Hawk?
Yeah, Hawk.
I knew more kind of a hippie girlfriend. And he kind of liked her, so he made her a balalaika, which is what you do when you kind of have a crush on a girl, I guess.
One time Sam came up to me and he said, I got to talk to you. I'm like, what? He goes, well, you whistle while you work and it's driving Barbie crazy. Don't be so happy and don't whistle. I'm 18 years old.
So I think Sam was 25, 26. He decided he was basically done. I mean, we were making acoustic guitars and electric guitars, and they were bird's eye maple Les Pauls with walnut bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so he'd buy the parts from Gibson, you know, the pickups and the tail pieces. And he owed him money that he couldn't afford to pay. And I guess it stopped being fun, or he wanted to do something different or whatever. So he announced he was going to go backpacking. We were supposed to figure out who was going to buy the shop from him. And the price was a total of $3,700. And that was divided between the money he was going to need to pay Gibson and then what he wanted for his tools. And I'm probably wrong on this, but I'm thinking it was $1,500 for the tools and $2,200 for what he owed Gibson. I might be wrong on that.
Yeah, for some reason, I'd go along with you on that. I have this $1,700 Gibson number in my mind, but it's just
could have been that too.
It's just a thing. It was Norlin at the time, Norlin.
Mm-hmm.
And Norlin owed Gibson.
Yeah.
And those guys that started, I think they were all from San Diego State. So this is 73. They started, I don't know what year.
69.
69, that comes to mind. So they found this area where Don Minnick was getting ready to build this multi-tenant industrial space. They leased the first unit. He'd poured the foundation, and they'd already bought this big old green bandsaw. And they moved it in because it was taller than the door on the side, set it there on the foundation. Then he finished building the building. And it was his other part. He had two partners. One was Captain Bob. I forget his last name. The other one was Lee Fulmer. Mm-hmm. And I got a friend request the other day on Facebook from Lee Fulmer.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm hardly ever on Facebook. I haven't accepted yet, but I thought, well, that's interesting. He tracked me down.
Yeah, and I think Captain
Captain Bob Morris.
Bob Morris, yeah. He was in the Army before that. He got out of the Army and joined the hippie shop, so they called him Captain Bob. Greg Daring knows those people.
Okay.
Because he's older than
Because he was
me,
there, yeah.
And he was there, so he remembers all the history of that. And I love it's really fun really listening to Greg and Janet tell the American Dream story, because it's incredibly close to ours, but it's from their perspective.
Yeah.
You know, very, very, very similar. We're like, oh yeah. And he knew a little bit more about those people. I came in, was pretty quiet. Mm-hmm. I just made guitars.
Yeah, so those other guys were gone.
They were gone.
When we both started, it was just Sam.
But Sam made guitars the way Sam made guitars. So still, by the time I had gotten my bench, so to speak, at the American Dream, I had discovered what a Martin guitar was. My first recollection of seeing a good guitar was watching the Johnny Cash show. He played this black guitar, which I didn't know what it was. It turned out to be a Martin D35 with a black top. But I would look at that guitar on TV and go, now that looks like a nice guitar. I mean, on the TV screen. Yeah. It's like something about that guitar. It doesn't look like these other stupid guitars, that you see on television. I invite anybody to Google the screen tests of the Monkees. First of all, they chose the right 4 guys. Okay, they were all performers like nobody's business. But pay special attention to the guitars that they had available to play. They were awful. If you look at that, you're like, that's what people had in those days? That's what they had? And you talk about this classical guitar with steel strings, probably came from Mexico or Brazil, or like the Gaibe guitar or something like that. And people had the awful guitars. But I saw that guitar that Johnny Cash played, and then I had a friend when I was I was a senior, and he said, I have this old guitar, it's called a Martin, and it was built like in the 1800s, and we have it at our house. Would you like to see it? Yeah. And I went there, and it's this little all-brown guitar, mahogany top, tiny body, said C.F. Martin inside of it. I didn't know what I was looking at, but by then I was told that that's special. And so I looked at it and I smelled it, and it was old. It was really old. And I thought, wow. And then I found out that Therrell's Music had Martin guitars. And I rode up there, and they had a case that had maybe 6 good guitars in it. They were Martin guitars. And there was a D18. It's a D18. What did I know about a D18? I knew it was the least expensive guitar in there out of all the guitars.
So here's Bob, the high school kid with his motorcycle, goes up to look at him.
Yeah, I've made 3 guitars.
Okay.
And a banjo. And I see this Martin in the store, and they get it out, and I look at it. It's like, I have to buy this thing. I look inside of it. It was, wow, I can't make a guitar that good. I wasn't playing it, choosing it for the tone. That was beyond me as a player. It's just like, wow, look at this. Look at inside of it. Man, I can't believe how nice that is. And look at the way they did the binding. How did they do that? And, the neck joint, it fits. And so I had 2 motorcycles. I went home and sold one. I went back and bought that guitar. And I just looked at it. I just smelled the inside. My nose was in it more than my hands were on the strings. And then that's about the time that I was finishing up guitars, I believe, and I started going to the American Dream and buying some parts and then hanging out there. So when we first started that, I had that Martin guitar.
How did you find out about the American Dream?
I guess it was the Yellow Pages. I went down to...
Have you heard of those before, Dave?
I've heard about them.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I bought frets the first time at Blue Guitar. Mm-hmm. And I went down and I was just a kid, and I learned about fret wire. And I bought some fret wire from them, and I bought some strips of plastic that ended up being binding. But I was catching abalone off of La Jolla Cove and bringing them home and crushing them and then grinding them flat because I learned to play the 5-string banjo back then. Mm-hmm. And I bought a book, Earl Scruggs, How to Play the 5-String Banjo. I mean, don't you love that? And then there was like 20 pages on the back, or 30, when you got through all the how to play the 5-string banjo, how to make your own 5-string banjo. And in there were some pictures of somebody cutting inlays, gluing a piece of paper and a little jeweler's saw and a little bird's mouth, board that you clamp, you hold the stuff down. I go, wow. And one thing led to another, and I found the American Dream. I bought some binding, and that's the first time that I ever saw a box with gauged abalone shell. And so the guitars that I made there, one of them is completely made of abalone that I ground down to the pearl, which is, not bright white like oyster shell. It's more fingernail colored, And then it was still pretty. And then the next guitar had real live mother of pearl on it that was processed from an oyster, or abalone that was processed from abalone. And I started buying that from them and then hanging out there.
And what did Eurus say to you when you went when you went to the Blue Guitar to buy some fret wire?
What are you going to do? Ruin your guitar, kid? I go, I don't know. And you know what? I've always said it was Eurus, but the other day I was on a podcast with Greg and Janet Daring. They wanted to do some reminiscing. And somewhere around then, I ended up telling that story. And Greg said, I don't think that was Eurus. I think that was, and he
Andre.
named a guy. What's that?
Andre.
Andre.
Yeah.
He goes, I think that was Andre. He was a grumpy guy. Eurus was in the back and wasn't grumpy. I go, oh, okay. I'm sorry, Eurus.
Okay.
I didn't know. I was only there one time.
Yeah.
Eurus was a good guitar builder from what I hear.
Yeah.
And I ran into him maybe twice in my whole career, and he was complimentary of what Taylor Guitars was.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We used to, on Friday nights, growing up in Bonita, we always used to go down and eat Mexican food at a place called La Piñata. And then one Friday night, we decided to go to the La Piñata in Old Town, and they're gone now. They went out of business. But we went to Old Town, the La Piñata, and leaving as the family, I saw a little place we drove past called the Blue Guitar. And I thought, and I looked at the signage or whatever, and I thought, wow, they actually make guitars? That's incredible. They actually make guitars. That's when I was still in high school. Made that impression on me.
Yeah. And Sam made guitars. And so here I come into American Dream, and I literally don't know how guitars are made. The guitars that I made are guitars I made. The body was the shape of a Yamaha. The crown of my peghead was the shape of that Con guitar I had. The inlays were how to make a 5-string banjo, hearts and flowers, Gibson pattern on one and a wreath pattern on another. The bracing was, the neck joints were classical guitar slip joints. I didn't know what I was doing. And then Sam also did not make Martin guitars or Gibson guitars. He made Sam Radding guitars, his own shapes, his own ideas about how it is, his own way to make a neck joint, the woods that he used. He was original. And so I learned my next stage of guitar building from Sam Radding. So we were well into business making original guitars. And this is so important to what I think is the success of our company, because we don't make other people's guitars. We make our guitars. And it's as innocent as can be. A lot of people might think that, they don't respect the old. I didn't even know that there was the old guard. I didn't even know they were there. I had no idea.
Were you making guitars with slimmer necks as far back as the Dream?
My first guitar that I made at American Dream, I was making it because a guy ordered it. It was my first commission. A guy ordered it, and he wanted to play it at the Julian Banjo and Fiddle Contest, which happens in October. And I started in September. And there's this guitar I'm trying to finish up. By the way, that guitar, the day before I delivered it, I dropped it when I finished it. And it broke the body. And
Did you stay up all night fixing it?
I stayed up all night and remade the whole thing, fixed it, remade it all.
And then,
It took me a month to make it, and it took me 12 hours to make it again.
yeah, because you had to.
Retop it and
Yeah,
yeah.
everything.
Wow.
I had there was a deadline. I had to produce. I had to get that thing done.
And Bob made himself a banjo, taught himself how to play it, and then entered at the Julian Bluegrass Festival and won on the banjo.
Yeah, I went in intermediate, and Jeff Stelling was from Stelling Banjos was a judge, and he's a red hot banjo player, right? I'm getting off on a tangent. And they're like, "You're not an intermediate player." I go, "I don't know what I am. I just learned how to play the banjo." They bumped me to advance and I won, So the neck, I just shaved a neck until, in my mind, is that Echo Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
I shaved a neck on that guitar. And people like Greg Daring would come over, and other people, it's like, "Wow, this neck is skinny." And I go, why are you making it so skinny? I go, "I don't know. It just feels good to me. Most people stop before it gets skinny." "No, I've got a perfectly good file. I'm just going to keep filing till it feels good." And that's what I did.
Yeah, and new guitars you'd buy then were incredibly hard to play. I mean, people would bring their guitars by to have the necks reshaped, the American Dream.
I would say that those first guitars of mine had skinny necks, but the geometry of the guitars was pretty crude, and I'd have to work pretty hard to make them play well and have a flat. My chops on that, I can thank a couple people in the future, which we'll talk about later. People helped me make better guitars. Well, I'll say John Larrivee and John Carruthers both showed me some real good secrets, But, those first guitars that I made, and the next thing you know, word got out. I got big skinny necks.
You guys are slugging it out there, getting to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam decides it's the end. And each of you formulate your plan.
Well, he says we're going to have a democratic vote of who gets to buy the shop. I'm not going to be decide. The shop will vote.
That's right.
It was Hippieville Commune, USA there. And so anybody who has a proposal to buy the shop, bring it to us and we'll present it to the group. The group will vote, and whoever gets the votes, that's the one who I'll sell the shop to. Is that how you remember it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Kurt put together a plan with Steve Schimmer, who was his neighbor across the street who was working there, and very well laid out plan.
Well, I did what I do, which is I wanted to learn about it. So I went to the Small Business Administration and got all their booklets on it and put together a plan and realized we needed to have a partnership agreement and various things, which are kind of a lot to try to do for a couple of kids looking at borrowing a few $1,000s to buy a business. But I had an idea of how to go about it that I thought made sense, and which included some things that were pretty stupid, like we actually needed to hire all the people on payroll and not have the kind of arrangement we did. And then we ended up going, that didn't last very long, having to pay people, guarantee them an hourly wage. And Bob had his friend Jerry Pike. My friend Steve has started working there too. I managed to get Steve a bench, who I grew up with. He lived across the street. And Bob's buddy Jerry Pike, was working there at the same time. So Bob and Jerry put together a proposal. Steve and I put together a proposal. And do you remember actually presenting them to everyone?
No, we didn't do that. Mine and Jerry's proposal was, we thought we'd make some guitars.
Let's make some guitars. That's what it's all about, right?
Let's make some guitars. And
good plan. Let's go.
That's what we're doing today. So we'll find someone to buy them. And tomorrow we'll make guitars and we'll find somebody to buy some. Yeah. And Kurt's was there. And then Kurt's dad asked him the fateful question.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
So I came to my folks and said, and I figured that we should put $10,000 together so we'd have working capital. And so I asked if they'd loan me the money for my portion, which was going to be 35%. Steve was going to have 35%, and Bob was going to have 30%. He was going to be in the minority.
Yeah, but before that, it was you and Steve.
That's right. At first, it was me and Steve.
And your dad. Right. And your dad said, "So, do you or Steve know how to make guitars?"
And we said, "No, not really." He said, "Well, who's the best guitar maker there?" And I said, "Well, that'd be Bob Taylor." And he said, "Well, if Bob would be your partner too, if you could ask Bob to be your partner, your mother and I would consider loaning you the money." Mm-hmm. So I went to Bob.
What was that conversation like? That's That's the one I'd love to be a fly on the wall on when this occurred.
Tell me your recollection.
When I went to him, I think I said basically, here's what I think it would take to buy the business, and we'd like you to join us, but we don't really need Jerry. We don't need to have 4 owners. And I forget how I sold him on the idea, but he agreed pretty quickly. I think he said you needed to talk with Jerry or something.
Yeah, well, the salient points that I remember were this could work good if you came together with us because you know how to make guitars and I have a good plan. We need you to make this thing work. And, you know, I don't think Kurt revealed that my folks won't loan me the money or consider it if you're not there. But and Kurt's a good negotiator, and he's always good at saying in his negotiation what's best for him. You know, I mean, to this day, he's got he's really good. He can just say, well, this would be a good deal for me. And so that's worked really good for Taylor Guitars because he's like, well, no, this is what we need, right?
Well, you have to do that.
That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
He's very good at it. It's baked into him. And then they said, but we'd like to each have 35 and you have 30 that way, because we don't know you, you know,
Which
and we don't
didn't.
really. And so this would make sure that we always have some type of control.
How did you feel about that?
I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah.
He just wanted to make guitars.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And then I said, all right, well, I'll bring Jerry in and he can have 10% of my 35. And they're like, yeah, well, that's what you want to do. Fine. And then I talked to Jerry, and one thing led to another. And he's like, yeah, you know, I've been wanting to see if I could be a pro golfer anyways. I think I'm going to go off and do that. And that little episode in his life was over. And he did that for a little while, and Jerry ended up becoming a kind of a scientist, bacteria specialist, sampler around the world for a Kelco company. And, you know, he can tell you stories of going to Antarctic and being the first person to pick the bacteria that becomes xanthan gum or those types of additives and stuff. Yeah. And so there we were. I came back and I go, okay, it's the 3 of us. I'll do 30. So I have to come up with $3,000. You each have to come up with $3,500. We'll go into business. The contribution of our capital is equivalent to the shares of the company that we own. So 30%, 35. And it was a very short conversation. And then we just went to Sam and said, here's what we want to do. There's no other competitive bids. I don't think we ever presented a plan to the shop.
Yeah, okay.
I don't remember doing that.
And I'd read that we should have a partnership agreement. So I found through SBA an attorney who would work really cheaply to help people draft stuff to start a business. And his name was Ken Woods.
Ken Wood, that's right.
And he was down in Chula Vista. And so he drafted the agreement for us. And I don't know if he's still living, but he lives in Rancho Santa Fe. And he ended up getting into specialized law having to do with thoroughbreds.
Really?
Yeah. I remember I've seen him in the paper a few times. So he drew up the general partnership agreement, and then we got the money and we were ready to finalize the transaction.
Did either of you have a backup plan if Sam said, you know what, I'm not going to sell, I'm just going to shut it down?
No.
No, I didn't have a backup plan.
No.
Yeah.
And my backup plan for failing in guitars, in building guitars, would be to build guitars. That's been my backup plan. I would pop up in another whack-a-mole hole and build guitars. That's been my plan.
Yeah. We were excited about it. We were very excited about it. And it was during that period when we were talking about it before we'd bought it. I remember Bob Roy also saying, and someday we'll be as big as Martin, kind of dreaming. I mean, here we're this little shop doing $30,000 a year worth of work, you know, in Lemon Grove, California, thinking someday we'd be as big as Martin.
And we weren't, and we didn't call them Taylor Guitars.
No.
Right off the bat. It took us a little bit of time,
Right.
a
Well,
long time.
it was the American dream, and we were buying the American dream. So we automatically assumed it'd be the American dream. Was it 460-5535? Was that
Yeah,
the
that's the phone number.
That was the phone number of American Dream.
460-5535,
Wow.
7936
And well,
Lester
it just
Avenue.
pops in your head, you know. So we got back from signing the papers. We took Sam down, and we signed the papers, and then we drove back to the shop. And then Sam told us, oh, by the way, you're not going to be able to use the name American Dream because my brother Gene owns it. And you're not going to be able to keep the phone number either because Gene's afraid that people will call here thinking it's, the American Dream and they're his customers. Mm-hmm. So actually we're going to change the number. And so all the calls will go to Gene's store. He had a little store on College Avenue by College and Elkhorn Boulevard. Mm-hmm. And Bob and I are like, oh, you're kidding. And so I said, well, then I guess you're fired, or I guess you're not going to work here with us.
Something like that.
Something like that. I mean,
and now
just
we
made the
have
call
no
right
yellow
then.
pages for another year.
Yeah, I mean,
and no way to tell anybody what our name is or what our phone number is.
Yep.
And that's
shocking news. And then firing Sam. That was the end of our first day when we bought the American Dream.
And later we'll talk about how Kurt's foresight with partnership agreements and having good documentation saved our company.
Yeah.
And to this day, it's those types of things. And I'll say it before, I'll say it again. People say, what's the secret of Taylor Guitars? And I say, mine and Kurt's partnership. That's the secret. That's the absolute secret.
That's true. Yeah, we created it. We worked well together. Talking to Andy a little bit this morning about because he needs to bring in more people of comparable magnitude to him, comparable ability and talent to do the things he wants to do and that we want to do for the company in the future. And, my point to him was something Bob had said earlier, which was like we were two logs burning off each other. Mm-hmm. We're each doing our own part and sharing the excitement. Oh, yeah, let's do that. And that's how the company ended up becoming what it is.
Mm-hmm. You pull those logs apart and they kind of both go out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's great stuff, guys.
And all of that we talk about in the American Dream years was 1 year.
But you got a lot of experience out of that 1 year.
Yeah. I had some experience going in. That was my own homegrown experience. But that I started working at the Dream after Labor Day.
August 73.
We're August?
August 73.
I think I came the day after Labor Day.
Could have been a week later or something.
Mm-hmm. And I remember I went water skiing in Mission Bay that morning, and then I came in the American Dream. And that was the last time I water skied. and
well, now that you built the business, you can go back to that.
Yeah. And October 15th was when we started in business as Taylor. So it was 1 year and 1 month. All that American Dream experience was basically 1 year of our life.
Although I do want to say one thing.
Lay it on me.
It could have been October 14th, but I was never able to find the agreement from buying Sam, so we just kind of settled on October 15th.
Yeah.
So there you go. I bet you didn't know that.
Kurt and I between us know, well, it's really October 14th, but we call it October 15th.
Well, and for those of you who don't know, we all, as Taylor employees, get to celebrate this every year with a day off, a company-paid day off.
It's nice.
So thank you.
On the 15th.
On the 15th.
On the 15th.
I hate to be doing it wrong all these years I've been here.
Yeah. It's not wrong if we agree on it.
So, guys, you got your seed money. I'm sure that felt like high finance to you at the time. You bought the Dream. You bought out Sam. You fired him. Mm-hmm. You paid your lawyer.
How ironic.
You set up the company 35-35-30. Mm-hmm. And Bob, you were 19, and Kurt, you were 21 at the time. Yeah. So congratulations, guys. You bought the company.
Thank you. We were in business.
It was exciting. Mm-hmm. I had it figured out what I'm going to do with my life. Didn't know how I was going to monetize it, but we were on our way.
Took a long time to learn how to actually make money.
Well, I'll tell you that it's important to love the doing. If the chop wood, carry water part isn't rewarding, because every job is 90% chop wood, carry water.
Yep.
You know that. It's work. And then, and you get, if you can't get satisfaction with the work, then I don't know if the money can matter. You know, I suppose it does, but I've never experienced that side of the workaday world.
Yeah, we've had plenty of people over the years that, you know, maybe they bought our guitars. They said, boy, it'd be so great to be in the guitar business like you guys. I wish I could do that. I hate my job. People that make good money. As attorneys, in particular, I've heard from a number of attorneys, there's the romantic notion of being in the guitar business. I mean, it's work like all work. It's work. It's challenging. It's difficult, but it does have to do with music. And that makes it really fun.
And woodworking and buying machines. I love making guitars because I always have a new machine I get to buy.
Well, yeah, we've got to find the meaning in our work, and we can make that connection. I don't get to sit around and play guitars all day. In fact, I don't play a lot of guitar when I'm at work because I have to get things done. But you can see how it all connects to the company's values, and it's great to be a part of that.
Well, we had to wake up the next day and figure out what to do. And we were off to a bad start, but we were great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was hard.
But each time we thought we had a solution, it's the hope of a solution that can spur you on, even if it doesn't work out, but it can give you months or years of invigorating work trying on that solution. And you learn things along the way.
Yeah, the odds were definitely against us. But people always liked our guitars. They liked Bob's guitars.
Well, they had to like you, too.
They liked us. I mean, Bob says the secret of our success is our partnership, which is 100% true. But the secret of the other secret of our success is people have always loved his guitars.
Better be
Sure
lucky
helps.
than smart sometimes. Yeah. Well, that was fun.
It was. Thanks, guys.